Nissan's Leaf has always been the quiet king of the affordable electric car with over 300,000 units sold since its launch in 2010. But you can't just rest on your laurels, and so Nissan's back with an all-new Leaf. It's hit the gym, it's learned a few new tricks, and it's ready to take on the likes of Chevy's Bolt and Hyundai's Ioniq. Let's hit the road and see how it rides. Okay, let's start with range. The EPA estimates the 2018 Bolt will do 150 miles per charge of its battery pack. That's a decent amount of range. I mean, the Bolt does like 220 and more range is always better, but the Leaf sits in what I think is a nice sweet spot. I mean, 150 miles of range is enough for you to do a decent commute to and from work, run some errands afterwards, and still have some juice left in the battery in case of an emergency. Now, over the last week, I've really felt like I only have to charge this thing when it's convenient for me, not necessarily when the battery and the range dictates. And I think that's the sweet spot for range when you're not really thinking about charging it. Now, a charge takes 7.5 to 8 hours at a 220 volt charging station. Or if you're a madman, you can plug it into a 110 volt outlet and it takes about 35 hours to charge. Don't do that, it's only for emergencies. Fortunately, the charging cable that comes with the Leaf has tips for both 220 volts and 110 volts. So as long as you can unplug a dryer somewhere, you can plug this thing in and get a really decent charge. That's helpful for when you're traveling to other people's houses that don't necessarily have charging stations built in. It also means you don't have to buy one if you don't want to. Now, if you're really in a rush, you can use the Shademo port up front at a compatible station to get a rapid charge to 80% in just about 45 minutes. That's a decent charge, like 120, 130 miles of range. So if you're in a rush, that's the way to do it, especially if you're going on a longer trip. Now, to find those stations, in the dashboard, we've got the Nissan Connect Infotainment system, and it's got maps that have built-in databases of charging stations. And because it's connected to the web, you can filter those stations by whether they're free or not, or whether they're fast charging stations, even on certain networks, whether they're actually available now or not. However, we've talked about this system in another video, so you want to check it out there, but the short story is that it's not the best system on the market. Personally, I prefer using a separate app on my smartphone like EVgo or ChargePoint to plan my trips outside of the car, and then when I'm in the car, using the standard Android Auto or Apple CarPlay connectivity to navigate to places. I just like that software better than what Nissan has here, but this is decent. It's nice to have it if you don't want to use anything separate. Now, I don't like the dashboard tech, but Nissan's safety tech is hitting on all cylinders, so to speak. I mean, there are no cylinders in the engine bay. But what we have is the ProPilot Assist safety suite of technology, and that's going to roll in all of Nissan's safety tech. Things like adaptive cruise control that works in stop-and-go traffic, pedestrian detection, emergency braking. You've also got a really advanced lane-keeping assisting system. It doesn't just bounce you off of the boundaries. When you're on the highway, you can actually feel it actively centering the car in the lane. Now, it is a hands-on system, so it's going to assume that if your hands aren't on the wheel, you're either disabled or distracted. It's going to try to get your hands back on the road, first by flashing lights and then by tapping the brakes to really bring your attention back forward. And if you ignore that, it'll actually bring the car to a stop in its lane, activate the emergency hazard lights, and then call for help. It's a really smart way of dealing with people who don't want to keep their hands on the wheel, and what's a hands-on system. Now, what's it like to drive this thing? Under the hood, we've got an electric motor that makes 147 horsepower and 235 pound-feet of torque. That's a really good amount of torque for a car of this size. It feels very responsive off the line, and on the highway, when you're in traffic, if you need to sort of quickly pass somebody, there's a good amount of power, and it's always available. You never have to build up to it like you do with a gasoline engine. Now, there is one weird feature. It's Nissan's e-pedal. When you activate it, it sets the regenerative braking system to its most aggressive, but also its most smart. So when you lift your foot off of the pedal, the car starts coming to a stop because it's on full regen. That means that you can effectively drive this car without ever touching the brake pedal. When you come to a complete stop, it'll even activate the friction brakes for you and hold the car there. Interestingly, I haven't actually touched the brake pedal in the last 3 days, aside from to turn the car on. It's that easy to drive this thing with one pedal in most conditions. But it does take some getting used to. Over the first couple of days, I would still reach over for the friction brake in certain situations, and that would lead to some very inconsistent braking and some jerky performance. However, if you take time to get used to it like I did, it's very natural, and I highly recommend that if you're going to drive a Leaf, drive it in that mode. It's going to get you the best range, and it's going to be kind of cool. Now overall, what I like most about the Leaf is that it's a car that knows what kind of car it is. It doesn't try to pretend to be the most advanced electric car on the market or pack the most advanced autonomous driving technology. It's just a really good electric car with really good range and really good performance, and at a really good value. The 2018 Nissan Leaf starts at around $29,000 for the base model, but this SL model here with all the bells and whistles we like tips the scale at around $36,600. That's before destination charges, but also before any incentives you may qualify for, so there's still money to be saved. This new Leaf has gone from being an understated value in the electric car space to being a solid contender at its price point. If you're looking for an affordable electric car with a lot of tech but none of the hype, the 2018 Nissan Leaf is worth your attention.